So I'm Ryan Hunt, the chairman of Dudley and South Staff's CAMRA. That's the Campaign for Real Ale. It's obviously a huge national movement for which Dudley and South Staff's branch incorporates Worley, which is the area in question today on this particular item. We have 1,100 fully paid members, and obviously several hundred of those are represented in Parliament by the Right Honourable John Speller for Worley. And obviously the revenue brought in from those 1,100 subscriptions allows us to campaign on behalf of local businesses, pubs, breweries, etc. Recent snap election, he was a signatory for CAMRA's own manifesto called the Pledge for Pubs, in which he made a direct promise to his constituents that he would do whatever was necessary to help pubs thrive in his area. By his own calculations, and I quote, "Community pubs play a crucial role in local life and make a huge contribution to the local economy, each injecting £80,000 to the local area every year." So, as do prefer to comment on good news stories, but we do believe that if this proposal was translated into reality, far from being a bad news story, it would be a devastating anti-business news story. And we have come to the conclusion as a committee that it would be, you could not sell to the public how you would allow two investors to inject money and time into the local area by opening a new business and then in the same calendar year take a decision that would be pulling the rug from underneath them and inflicting substantial harm onto the business. It's that Dudley CAMRA doesn't oppose this policy instrument in all of its means, and we would take it on a scenario by scenario basis, but the conclusion here is that there is clear damage that would be done to the business which hasn't been factored into their business plan, and the sustainability of the business is obviously at risk.
A list of the objections.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen them.
Yeah, I've seen them, yeah.
Have you seen them?
Yeah.
Yeah, and some of them, they're a bit laughable. The one in particular, it says that the residents knew the parking situation before they moved in.
Mm-hmm.
It's a row of terraced houses. Now, what I find there is that they were there before the pub, as such. Now, that is, saying, well, we don't care about the local residents.
I think what that objection is saying is that when people moved into the terrace houses, there was no designated parking for them. That's my interpretation of that objection, is that obviously what goes hand in hand with living in a terraced house is that you are competing for somewhere to park, but obviously what trumps that is the fact that there's not enough spaces for those residents anyway. So there's clearly going to be a lot of conflict because I don't know who you're going to give them to and who you're not going to give them to. There are more houses than spaces, so you're going to have huge local... If you think that there's a disturbance about this, I would wait and see what happens when you selectively give out permits.
Okay. I will ask Robin to come back with the Highways response to me on that, more or less the exact question.
It's already documented that there's not enough spaces to give everybody a permit.
Yeah. 5 and 7 of the residents would benefit from permit spaces in the car park. And so the proposal is to allow them to permits, or to put in place permit spaces to allow them somewhere to park.
Yeah.
The idea being that we could issue up to 7 permits against 5 spaces, because not all the residents will be there at the same time, and even if they do all arrive home at the same time, it'll be on a first come, first served basis. But at least they've got a better opportunity to get somewhere to park cars near to their house.
Yeah, and I think if the arithmetic was a bit more straightforward, the argument would obviously be harder to contest, but because the arithmetic isn't, and obviously that only represents a snapshot now, that's not to say that the pressure and requirement for permits in a year, 2 years, 3 years' time won't change when more households could potentially be demanding to have one of those permits, that you're going to actually just be setting yourself up potentially in the future, unless you were proposing to add extra spaces to the car park. It just seems as though it's a conflict waiting to get out of hand in terms of that, but it also depends on the value placed on the local businesses, because it's not, obviously we understand what you just said is purely anecdotal and speculative in that it's the pub that's solely contributing to the issue, because obviously there's chip shop and other businesses which make use of that car park, so obviously that is purely anecdotal that this pressure is coming solely from one business. But when the individuals are given permission, obviously they factored into their business case that there would be parking for designated drivers, and that's what their business model is built upon, and stripping that out as a source of their income is obviously the reason why you would understand people are objecting to the proposal.
I'll answer that one first. We are, and we would have to say, well, we'd have to consider it, or planning would have to consider it, or the corporate land part of the council would have to sort of that. In which case, the pub might have to buy it or lose it. They could put another house up there, or two almost, theoretically. That hasn't happened. But I can assure you that if we said 5 spaces now, that would not be increased as the land is at the moment.
Yeah. Well.
And also, if, as it stands at the moment, if all of those residents came down when the car park was empty and put their cars on there, there's nothing to do about that.
Yeah.
And there's nothing to do about that.
Yeah, and obviously that first come first serve is how practically nearly every car park does operate with fine success. But with respect, Chair, I would say that introducing a factor of potential investment in the future is hypothetical, and we can only discuss the application as presented today, and I can only argue for what I think is the best outcome for people today, and that's what I'm here doing.
And you're doing a marvellous job, and it's only because you are represented that I am not saying that it's Council and we will choose to do as we please. We're taking that into consideration, and to be honest, my answer will be, or decision will be, that 5 spaces are reserved for the local residents. On an ad hoc, if they get there first, they get there first.